Here we go again. It is episode 3. I'm Peter Stratton. I'm joined here by Hayden and Isaac. And we are back after a short, or kind of a long break here. We wanted to rearrange how we do the episodes. We're going to split them into two 30-minute to 45-minute episodes. Probably leaning towards 30-minute episodes, just so you guys have time to get in and hear every single thing we have to say if you'd like to listen, instead of sitting through a whole hour podcast, because I know not too many people have time for that. But we want to get right into it by speaking about Kobe. As we know, he died in a helicopter crash right outside of Calabasas this morning or this afternoon with his 13-year-old daughter as well. Prayers go out to Kobe's family and really everyone, because Kobe was very well known around the world and easily a top 5 athlete worldwide. So I want to get into our favorite Kobe memories, and I want Isaac to start it off here. Isaac, what's your favorite Kobe memory?
So this isn't necessarily it didn't make me love Kobe, and I'll preface this by saying I'm a massive OKC fan. For anybody that knows me, they know that's true. We lived through a lot of heartbreak, but I remember, I think it was in 2012, I was at my grandma's attic. She had like a little attic room, and we were watching the Thunder play the Lakers in the first round of the playoffs. And this is back when the Thunder were relatively young. They were a new franchise, so they had still had Harden and Durant and Westbrook all together, and Ibaka. And I just watched Kobe Bryant manhandle these fools for 4 games and absolutely gave it to him like it wasn't anybody's business. And of course, anybody can say, you know, the 81 points and what he was able to do with 60 points in his last game, and the matchup that he had against LeBron in the All-Star game that just put a cap on his career, and who he was as an athlete and what he did for the game as an ambassador outside of the game, how he was as a father, a mentor to other athletes. I think it just says a lot to him and his character, and I think there's not one specific point I can point to with Kobe Bryant, but it was just how he, you know, the Mamba mentality. Like, he's going to leave that behind, and everybody's going to remember that for generations to come. And his hard work, his effort towards everything that he did in life. He didn't do anything unless it was worth doing to perfection. And I think anybody can take that and use it in their lives as well. So I'm sad to see him go. I'm praying for his family. Nobody wants to, you know, have this happen, and it's awful. It's terrible.
Hayden?
Yeah, I have Kobe. I have a picture of Kobe taped to my computer at work. It's literally just a picture of him shooting, and it says Mamba mentality, because, like you were saying, Isaac, Kobe's just that guy that everything he did, he just crushed it. I saw, and this story could be a little shaky, but you know how he led his girls' team there to like a 100-point victory against a team that had beat them 2 years before or something like that?
Yep.
Stuff like that's just impressive, how everything he did, he just worked his tail off at it, and he obviously it showed. But my favorite memory was his final game. His last 3 or 4 years were kind of plagued with injuries there ever since the Achilles injury, and then he came back, and it wasn't he just, you know, scored 60 in a game. I mean, he carried them to a come-from-behind win, I believe, against Utah at the time, when the Lakers obviously had, you know, in the middle of their several years of missing the playoffs. But I remember talking about that in chemistry the next day with Nate Myhock a little bit, and just saying how crazy and cool it was, you know, to see that, and then him kind of ride off the right way. Same way with, you know, Derek Jeter hitting that walk-off double in his final game there. It's, you know, stuff like that always happens for a reason.
Yeah, I would have to say I agree. Me and Hayden are kind of on the same page here, but he's going to be going with the 60-point final game. I got to go with the 81-point game he dropped against the Raptors in, I think it was late January 2006. That was the game at 8-year-old little Peter. They're not even 8-year-old, 7-year-old Peter. Got him into basketball. I remember watching that, and just at halftime they were like, you know, could he drop 100? Could he break Wilt Chamberlain's records? You know, and all that. And it was something amazing. It was what got me into eventually becoming a OKC fan, somehow, Isaac. But just seeing that man's dominance out in the field, 28 for 46, so he shot 61% from the field goal, 54% from 3, 81 points. 81 points. Like, that hasn't been done. We haven't seen 80 points since Kobe's 80 points, if I'm correct. it was just an amazing moment. I'm sure it got a lot of other kids around the world inspired to start watching basketball and start paying attention to more sports because, like you said, the Mamba mentality. So we all just wanted to put in our favorite Kobe moments right there because we thought it'd be a good honor of him. Once again, rest in peace, Kobe. Prayers to all his family members and all his close friends and anyone who loved Kobe as much as the average basketball fan loved Kobe. All right, so moving on, we're talking about the Packers, 49ers, and the Titans, Chief. We're going to give our little thoughts on each game. And I know Hayden and Isaac probably both have a lot to say as they are both Packer fans themselves. So I'm going to let Isaac start it off here. Packers 49ers. Give me some of your thoughts about the game.
Well, first of all, Pete, I think it's foolish as Packers fans, looking back on it, to sit there and thought that we had a chance to not only make the Super Bowl but to win the Super Bowl. And the reason being is because we just don't have the horses up front. Our front seven, I'm thankful for the adjustments that we made in the offseason. I'm so thankful we went to free agency. I think we're going to touch on that later. But I'm happy for the Smith brothers. I love that we picked up Amos. I love that we drafted Gary and Savage. I think Gary's going to develop well in the system. Let's give him a few years before we really make any judgments on him. Excuse me. But I think it's so disappointing anytime you can walk into an opponent's stadium and just get blasted on the ground for almost 300 yards, make a quarterback so irrelevant to win the game. That all he has to do is hand it off, and they're picking up 5, 6, 8-yard chunks like it was nothing. I'm convinced that, Peter, if you got the ball, you would have not been touched till about 5 yards down the line of scrimmage.
Thank you.
It's ridiculous. And it's frustrating as a fan to sit here. The guys on the podcast have known this. I've made the debate for years that I think Aaron Rodgers is the GOAT. I think he's the greatest of all time, not because he's the most accomplished, but because he's the most talented QB to ever play the game. And it's sad that the most talented QB to ever play the game is only going to probably retire with 1 ring. And the reason being is because I think he's hard to work with. My opinion on Aaron Rodgers has every season since about 4 years ago has gotten worse and worse. I still love him. I'm happy he's a Packer, but I can't defend him as much as I could. It's so frustrating as a fan to watch a quarterback need to pick up 6 or 7, but he throws for 30 or 40. And I understand what he was trying to do. He either saw a defensive hold at the line of scrimmage and he's trying to take advantage of it. He's trying to draw the pass interference deep down the field. He trusts his wide receiver to go up and get the ball, and he puts it in a place where only they can get it. But when that's only working 10% of the time, and you need 6, and you can throw the ball for 7. Tom Brady's throwing the ball for 7. Drew Brees is throwing the ball for 7. And you're unable to just take what the defense gives you and have to go be the Superman is frustrating beyond all belief. And it was evident watching that game that their defensive line is head and shoulders above our defensive line and our offensive line. They bullied us. We only had 50 yards on the ground when, that was really what we found our identity with. And what I was excited about as a Packers fan was we didn't have to rely on Aaron Rodgers' arm to win us the games. We could put the ball in the hands of a running back. He could win it on the ground, but we got bullied up front. And like I said, I'm curious to see what we do in free agency, but we're going to have to do something in free agency and the draft. Blake Martinez is not the answer at linebacker. Kenny Clark, our defensive line, I am more confident in than I have been in recent years, but we have to do something in our linebacker position to bolster the strength and the speed especially. We cannot just walk into teams and get – I looked up the statistics. We had teams rush for over 150 yards on us 8 times this season. That's ridiculous. I think, if you really want kind of a hot take, I think – the defensive coordinator position is going to be a position that we are going to be looking to hire for in the upcoming weeks, because I don't think that you can have a defensive coordinator allow 300 yards and not adjust to that at halftime, not adjust to it in game and in quarter. I think is laughable. I think it's a joke, and I think it's unacceptable as a Packers fan. But I just don't see us getting over the hump, staying where we are right now. We have to get better. We have to get better on the front, and Aaron Rodgers, he's getting older. Give him some more weapons. Give him no excuse other than to just go throw to big bodies and hit wide open players because he could not get rid of the ball when he needed to this season. He was holding on to it for whether that was the lack of separation our wide receivers were getting or him trying to make a play out of nothing. Who knows? I think it was a mixture of the two, but it's frustrating nonetheless. Hayden, you want to add on to that?
Yeah, I mean, you certainly did a good job, but basically the moral of the story, I don't think offensively Green Bay played too bad. I think they certainly could have played worse, but I didn't. Everyone knew that if the Niners were going to score 37 points going into the game, that they were going to win the game. I wanted Green Bay to win a game, maybe 24-17, 24-21, something like that. But, I believe, and I'm forgetting his name here, Mostert, or is that it?
Raheem Mostert. Yep.
Yeah, yes. I think I heard it was his, seventh team the Niners were. And then in the NFC Championship, he runs for over 200 yards and 4 touchdowns. And, yeah, I mean, it speaks volumes in its own. I mean, you get a little bit better of a run defense, and I think the Packers, really are in a much better position moving forward. But, the basic gist of the game was the Niners could just run the ball down, Green Bay's throw it all day, and that's exactly what they did.
And how do you not adjust to that? That's my biggest in watching the game twice. We made no apparent adjustment at any part of the game. It was a butt kicking from the moment we kicked off to the moment the clock hit 0. There was no adjustment made offensively, defensively. I mean, it was for me to have to sit there and sit through the game twice while we were rewatching it was even more frustrating than the first time. I mean, I don't even know. I'm beating a dead horse here, but how do you not make an adjustment? And Mike Pedden, how do you not adjust?
I think that's something that I really wanted to touch on as well. We're going into the postseason. We were the 23rd worst rush, or excuse me, not the 23rd worst, 23rd best, if you want to put it that way. We're 23rd ranked in rushing defense. I want to know how we come into a game against the 49ers who use quite a few guys. We're talking about Mostert, Coleman, Breida throughout the season, and all of them put up numbers week to week, especially if you had any of them on your fantasy team. You never knew who to start because every week it was someone different putting up 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. I want to know how we go into that game, not just make adjustments at halftime. How do we go into that game as a 23rd ranked rushing defense and not find a way to stop Raheem Mostert going for 29 carries and 220 yards, 4 touchdowns? I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo threw for 77 yards on 8 attempts. It's pathetic. I mean, this is worse than some of the Derrick Henry outings I've seen him do. Raheem Mostert, like Hayden touched on, 7 teams. This guy was basically a nobody before coming into the season. And by the time the NFC Championship game starts, he's putting up 220 on the Packers. So I think you guys touched enough on the Packers, but I think talking about getting ran over by Raheem Mostert, the Chiefs stopping Derrick Henry, who only ran for 69 yards on 20 carries, a 3.6 average. Let's talk about that a little bit. So the Chiefs, I didn't get to watch most of this game. I only watched about half of it, I would say. So, sadly, I don't have all the information to give you. I can't give you all the good insights and such. But looking at the box score and stuff, it looks like what we saw coming. They had a game plan for Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry was stuck to 3.6 on an average. He got a touchdown in there. And sure, it was a competitive game for quite a little bit. But then Patrick Mahomes took over, and he just showed you how many weapons they have. And how this team is my favorite to win the Super Bowl, in my opinion. Sammy Watkins, Tyreek Hill. You got Darwin Thompson, Damian Williams out of the backfield. Demarcus Robinson even comes in there every once in a while for a 20-yard catch. Travis Kelce, let's not forget about him, probably the best tight end in the league. This team has so many weapons, and they were actually able to find a game plan to stop Derrick Henry for the life has ran over everybody. The Ravens, who have a very good rushing defense. Very good rushing defense. Let me get this correct. 5th best rushing defense, and I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but he put up a pretty big bill on him. And the fact that the Chiefs came in with a game plan to stop Derrick Henry, but the Packers themselves couldn't come in with a game plan to stop Raheem Mostert, even at halftime, like you pointed out, Isaac. No adjustments were made. No noticeable adjustments, and that's something you got to look at the defensive coordinator and you got to think, do we need to do something there? Is there something we need to move on with? Do we need to move on from our guy? So, going back to the Titans and Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes showed his dominance. He showed us who he is. He showed us, even after injury, who cares? He's Patrick Mahomes. He's the next best quarterback in the league. Knock on wood. Titans, Ryan Tannehill was Ryan Tannehill. 209 yards, 2 touchdowns. I don't know what this little midseason magic was from him. I don't know what he did with the Titans, but I'll give him props for it. Because their roster, I don't think, is too good either. I mean, we're talking about Corey Davis, an absolute bust, if you want to say it. He's a bust. He was the Titans' #1 receiver for how long, and he never did anything with numbers. Give or take, he had Marcus Mariota as his quarterback, so that doesn't help him out too much. But A.J. Brown, another great wide receiver. I think he's young, and he's going to eventually be one of the best wide receivers in the league, or one of them. So I just want your guys' thoughts on the Titans Chief, and maybe the Chiefs stopping Derrick Henry, and how many weapons the Chiefs have. Hayden?
Yeah, I mean, the game was pretty straightforward. All they had to do was stop Derrick. You saw they did that, and then in the second half it was Tannehill versus Mahomes, and if anyone has to pick a side between those two, it's going to be pretty lopsided in that term. So I wasn't surprised at all with the outcome of the game. I didn't think the Titans were going to figure out a way to win that just because they simply were overpowered. But like I said, as it kind of got into a shootout there, I would have liked to see Mariota in there a little more. Just kind of as a dual threat. And I know that's, obviously that's where the league is kind of headed with these young guys like Lamar and Mahomes and Deshaun, and that's why I almost wonder if, because of the poor performance, in the second half by Tannehill there, when he really kind of had to show you what you got, you do wonder if the Titans will stick with Mariota going into next year, and just rely heavily on the run game, maybe work a little option in there with Mariota and Derrick Henry. But overall, the game was kind of what I think we all expected it to be. Not too much of a blowout, but it was never really something that you thought the Titans, could reach out and grasp a win there. So moving forward, though, I'm excited for this Super Bowl matchup. I think, George Kittle and Travis Kelce will be a fun tight end matchup there. But I do think that the Chiefs are going to win, solely because of Patrick Mahomes. I think he'll be able to do enough. He'll be able to do enough on that Niners defense, and the Chiefs, a couple D linemen I think were actually Pro Bowl selections there. I think they'll be a little bit better at stopping, the run, and they're not going to give up 200 yards to an absolute no-name player the way Green Bay did. But yeah, overall, it was a game I think we all saw coming, and hopefully next Sunday here is a little bit, keeps us a little more on our toes.
Isaac?
First of all, I wanted to touch on for all the Packers fans out there that had their fingers crossed for the Titans to somehow upset the Chiefs and to move on to the Super Bowl had we beaten the Niners. We would have gotten blown out.
Big time. It
would not have been a close game. Derrick Henry would have broke the single game rushing record. He might have broke the 1,000-yard in a single game. Like, why would you not just hand the ball off to that dude? That's beside the point, but also something I wanted to pinpoint for all you Packers fans with your fingers crossed, hoping that would have happened. But about the Kansas City Chiefs, I think you guys summed that up really well. I think it was pretty much what I expected. I think that they were pretty much a one-horse show. If you stop Derrick Henry, if you provide an answer, that was a big if going into the game, but they had a good game plan. I think they loaded up the box. They made Tannehill, have to make some throws to some would call an average to mediocre wide receiving core, and made Tannehill beat him, which I don't think he was capable of. I don't think that's kind of quarterback Tannehill is. I think he's average at best. I think in the offseason, looking into the free agency, I think that he's going to be a hot commodity. I think he is a wannabe Nick Foles in that area where he's going to get some money in the offseason, but I think that he's an average quarterback at best at times. But I think, you guys hit the nail on the head. I'm excited for the Super Bowl matchup. Don't know how much of it I'm going to tune into and watch. I will disagree, though. I think the Chiefs are getting a lot of hype, but I do think the Niners will take care of business. I think their defensive line is just so dominant. I think they're going to make Patrick Mahomes uncomfortable. I think their secondary is good enough to bottle up, not necessarily shut down, but to bottle up Kelsey and Hill. I don't think their running game is as good when the passing game isn't being as effective. I think that they can throw to some running backs out of the backfield. Now, I don't think Raheem Mostert's going to run, for anywhere near what he did against us. I think he's still going to be effective. I think that they have a three-headed monster there of running backs that are going to get carries, and I think Garoppolo is a better quarterback than some people give him credit for, and I think they have Kittle is a matchup problem regardless of what team you're playing, and I'll be curious on who they're going to match up, if they're going to move more of a zone against him and trade off between a few players and coverage with him, or if they're going to try to just play a man-on-man with a safety or linebacker and see if they're, and how I'm curious to see how Garoppolo and the 49ers will take that mismatch and use it to their advantage. I'm a little curious to see how Kyle Shanahan will do since his return to the Super Bowl and the 28-3 comeback. Hopefully, if things go awry, that he can make some adjustments this time. But I think you guys covered it well. I'm excited to see the game, and I'll say I know we haven't thrown out numbers yet, but I'll say that the 49ers win, and they win by 10 points. I'll take the 10-point spread there.
I was just going to say we should move that segment up a little bit. I was going to ask for your score prediction, but you just gave me the 49ers by 10, which I think is a bold. You're keeping it close a little bit, but I do think that's bold because I just don't see the 49ers beating the Chiefs. I mean, when you look at the defense, the 49ers defense easily top 3, if not the best, probably the best defense in the league we saw this year. And the Chiefs, when they're going full force, when they got the right strings pulled and everything like that, they're the best offense in the league. And I want to see Jimmy Ward covering Travis Kelce. Jimmy Ward's a hard-hitting safety. I mean, we saw some of the hits he put on during the season. I would love to see him matched up on Travis Kelce, and I think you'll be able to slow down Kelce enough. And Richard Sherman, I don't know if just Richard Sherman is enough to stop all their wide receiver talent. I mean, they don't have enough people to cover Robinson and Tyreek and Sammy Watkins. My opinion, I just don't see it. I think the rushing game for the Chiefs is going to be held to a minimum. I don't think we see more than 70 yards from the Chiefs rushing, maybe even 60 yards. I think it's going to be a battle of who can get the first score. I think first score might win this game. I think it's going to be one of those games. We look at the 49ers front. They got D Ford, Quan Alexander, Fred Warner, we got Richard Sherman, Jimmy Ward. Those are just a couple of names on the defensive side of the 49ers. And now that I'm thinking about it more, Isaac, I want to start leaning towards the Niners just looking at this defensive depth chart. But I'm going to stick with the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs have enough firepower. I think the Chiefs have enough on defense to get through this. I'm going to say it's going to be a high-scoring game. I'm going to go 44-37.
I mean, you have to remember this too, and this may be a hot take to a certain extent. George Kittle is, without a doubt in my mind, the best tight end in the game, and I think there is a significant gap between him and Kelce because I think they use him so differently in their offense. They rely on him, and also to that statement, Pete, I don't think the Kansas City Chiefs have that good of a wide receiving core. I think they are good because they try to open things up with Hill, and if you shut down Hill, then you have to rely on, you have to bring a double team on Hill, which opens up everybody else. I think if you can just bring one man or run a cover 3 like Richard Sherman has been doing, and keep Hill to the minimum, I think you're able to shut down the other wide receivers. I don't think that Sammy Watkins is who Sammy Watkins was at one point in his career. I think he can be shut down. Obviously, different wide receivers and on that team go off. I don't know. I think if they're not careful, it could be a 49ers blowout, to be honest with you, Pete.
See, I guess that's where I didn't really touch on. By receiving depth, I mean they have some receiving depth, but Andy Reid is just such a good schemes. He has the best schemes in the NFL, and I don't think anyone can disagree with that. The way he gets people open, and you add how good he is at getting people open and then all the targets they have on the offensive side. And Richard Sherman is not good at staying with someone and marking him. Like you said, he plays zone 3, and that might be the key to stopping the Chiefs. But like I said, you're really making it hard. But I'm still going to stick with the Chiefs by 7, 44-37. I think it's going to be a big blowout type of game. Not blowout, but a big scoring game. Hayden, you want to touch on who you think's going to win the Super Bowl?
Yeah, I mean, I briefly mentioned it there, but I do think it'll be the Chiefs are going to beat the Niners solely because I think Patrick Mahomes is um, a better quarterback than the Niners are defense. I think he'll be able to beat them, but like I said, I expect it to be a close one. I don't think it'll be too high scoring. I think ultimately, it'll still be ultimately it'll still be kind of a lower scoring game, but I'm thinking maybe 28-21, in favor of the Chiefs, maybe 28-24, something like that. But yeah, I think the Chiefs are just too good. I never doubted them. I certainly was aboard the Ravens, but I don't think the Chiefs' ability to play the game of football has been doubted at all, especially with the longtime coach Andy Reid versus the young coach Kyle Shanahan. It'll be interesting for sure, to kind of see how it plays out. But ultimately, like I said, I think the Chiefs come out on top.
What was the score again? What was your score prediction?
I'll say 28-21.
28-21. Okay, I like that score. So you're going to no field goal game, huh?
I am. Yes.
respect that.
It's the Niners just go ahead and hit 7 field goals instead of scoring a touchdown. But yeah.
All right, so moving on to what Isaac touched on a little bit is how the Packers were really good in free agency, bringing in the Smith guys and then, Amos and other great additions in the draft, which is where we're going to have to be focusing this season, the Packers are, because the Packers GM Brian Gutekunst, excuse me if I'm pronouncing that horribly wrong, said that the free agency spending will be restrictive this year. Now, this is something I think they can live with, except on the offensive side of the ball. I think on the defense, maybe drafting another inside linebacker or a cornerback would be the move to go. But what do you think? They got to focus on offense on the draft now that they can't spend. Since he said spending will be restrictive this year, what are you guys' takes on this, Isaac?
I think first of all you have to look at locking guys up on our roster first. I don't think, and I'm very adamant on this, that you let Brian Bulaga walk. I think it's too hard to find a good right tackle replacement, especially in the kind of draft that we're coming up, to this year. I think you re-sign him to a 3-year contract. Again, he's 31 years old. He's probably got 3 more years left in him. I think you spend the money. I think you keep him in green and gold. I think, I think you have to go wide receiver in the draft. And depending on what you're doing in the draft, I think dictates what you do in free agency. Because nobody's going to debate that the Packers need another outside guy, whether that's A.J. Green, whether that's Schultz out of Colorado, whether you trade up in the draft to make an argument for Judy or Lamb, or you go Jefferson late in the first, or there's no debate that there has to be, that position has to be addressed. Again, a lot of what happens in the draft and what their draft board looks like, and obviously none of us are in their room, they're in their war room and look at their draft board on a day-to-day basis. So it's hard to sit here and speculate without really knowing for sure, having insider information. But I would be interested in going and getting an older wide receiver for the right price. I don't think AJ Green's going to be the right price. Robbie Anderson.
That's the name I wanted to throw out.
Could be a good move, just because of his age. I don't know if I really want his personality in the locker room. And that's just a personal thing. That's not. People are going to obviously disagree with me in that statement. I like him as a talent, but if he's gonna provide any more rift in the locker room, I don't think that needs to be necessary, especially with the wide receiver talent in the draft. It's so deep. There's 7 guys that could go in the first round, arguably, this year. I think there probably needs to be another look at tight end. If you want to, that's something I think you can find a good, you can spend good money in free agency this year. It's not going to make you go broke, is to get another good tight end. Because I think that I fully expect the Packers to let Jimmy Graham walk, and I am full agreement with that. I don't think that he's going to provide anything more than 3 catches a game with 3 drops. He's an awful blocking tight end. I think Mercedes Lewis is a great blocking tight end, but at the end of his career. So I think I'm okay with it being restricted because it's been restricted for like the past decade, with the exception of Julius Peppers and prior to Gutekunst. But to having, Ted Thompson there, it's been restricted, so it's nothing new for us Packer fans to sit back and to have the phones be really silent. I'm not necessarily sure we should be a day one caller and get into the high contracts and get ourselves into a hole where we're paying I disagreed with the Billy Turner contract from the beginning. I think we overpaid. So I don't know if I really want to get into that, right off the bat early in the first 2 days. Maybe see talk to your guys, re-sign them, see what you're going to do in the draft, address some stuff, and go, for Pete's sake, get some linebackers. If they do not draft a linebacker in the first 2 rounds, I am personally going to drive up to Lambeau Field. Like, it is so frustrating to not have a linebacker or to address it 4 rounds in, or to not address it in free agency. I think it's ridiculous that an undrafted free agent and Curtis Bolton, Boomer Sooner, but was going to be our starting outside linebacker when the guy's 2 inches taller than I am and outweighs me by maybe 10 pounds. I think that's ridiculous. But that's just my feelings on it. I think that there's a few ways they could go. Again, I'm a big draft guy, but you have to make some moves in free agency if you want to go anywhere. I think you have to make, also in the offseason, coaching changes need to be addressed. But yeah, I'm serious. If we don't address the linebacker position in free agency or the first 4 rounds of the draft, I'm gonna lose it. I will legitimately lose it.
Hayden?
Yeah, I mean, ideally, I'd like, if they go in free agency, a linebacker I'd like to see would be Joe Schobert of the Cleveland Browns. I believe he's an unrestricted free agent here this year. The former Wisconsin product. I think it'd be fun to bring him back. Or even if they, made a splash for a bigger name, probably would cost a little bit too much if they went after a, Bobby Wagner or a Deion Jones. But ultimately, I would like to see them draft, an inside backer in the first round. And then I'd like to see him take a receiver in the second, and I'd also like to see him sign a receiver. I do like the idea of A.J. Green. If you got to overpay him a little bit, I think a big weapon like that. Obviously, this year, you know how close Green Bay was, and Rodgers' time is running thin. So I think it might be worth it to, lock down a big weapon, big playmaker like that. But I could also see something like, maybe Randall Cobb coming back on a 1-year deal again. Playing in the slot a little bit there. I don't know why I could see that happening, but the tight end position you mentioned there, Isaac, I would love to see Eric Ebron or Hunter Henry, in the green and gold. I think Ebron is kind of like a Jermichael Finley in a way, just in terms of size. I know he's kind of, slowing down a little bit here, but he would be a fun weapon too. I love the idea of getting a big-bodied playmaker in there next to Lazard, I believe, is our biggest receiver. And seeing what can happen there. But no, definitely, in the first 2 rounds, I think inside backer and a wide receiver for sure.
I don't want to say too much on this topic here, but you said possibly overpaying for A.J. Green. Do we really want to overpay for a guy who's injury prone, 32, and 32 years old? Do we really want to pay a huge contract to a guy like that?
Pete, I think you're just jealous that you drafted A.J. Green pretty early in the fantasy league, and he just never got to see the field. So I think maybe you're a little salty. That being said, no, I don't think you pay for him. I think there's just too many options in the draft. You can, if the price is right. If he's still there 5-6 days into free agency, which I don't think he will, then yeah, make a go at it. At least throw him an offer. 3 years, $21 million. I'd be great with that. I think he's still got a lot in the tank. But if we're talking 4-year contract, 4-year $50 million, something where he's making over, $9-10 million a year, which I think he's looking for the $12 million range if I read a report right. No, stay away from that like the plague.
All right, and to round out our part 1 of the third episode, or the first episode since coming back off our little 2-week vacation, I want to touch on, is Eli Manning a Hall of Famer? I've been seeing a lot of people say, how can you give a guy with stats like that, such an average quarterback in his later years? I mean, we all know the Eli memes and everything. Can we give a guy like that who's led the league in interceptions 3 different times? Can he go to the Hall of Fame? I want to be the second one to touch on this. I want someone to go in first, so I'm going to pick Hayden here. Hayden, Eli Manning, Hall of Famer. Would you vote for him?
Yeah, I'd vote Eli Manning into the Hall of Fame just because of, what he did in his 2 Super Bowl wins there, beating the Patriots as severe underdogs. I think that alone gets him there. I understand his career record, I believe, is 117 and 117, which is classic Eli, in terms of the definition of average. But, he was a franchise quarterback. He won a few Super Bowls. I think he's a little bit, criticized just because of how much better Peyton was, obviously, than him. And I think maybe if Peyton wasn't in the picture, people would be a little more, favorable toward the idea of him in the Hall. But I definitely think he's going there just because, like I said, 2 rings. He was there for years and years. I believe it was the 2003 NFL draft. I could be wrong. But really turned that franchise around there for a few years. And I definitely think he deserves to be there.
I have to agree with you. I think beating the Bill Belichick Patriots dynasty 2 times, and let's not even get started on the great catch in the first one, and then the second one no one saw coming. I mean, let's be honest. Did you guys see the Giants beating the Patriots in that second Super Bowl? I didn't. Sitting there as a middle school kid, I'm like, that's not happening. But Eli Manning somehow found a way to be Tom Brady's kryptonite whenever it came to anything. And he never led, how do I put this? He never had more interceptions than touchdowns, except for 1 year, 2013. He had 18 touchdowns, 27 interceptions. Besides that one fluke year, it's not like he had crazy off numbers. I mean, he threw for 366 touchdowns and 244 interceptions in his career. Now, those aren't great numbers. He didn't even hit the 400 touchdown mark. But going back to it, it's not about stats all at the end of the day. It's about rings. And he was the quarterback of 2 Super Bowl winning teams. Of course, Tom Coughlin was coaching that, and now Tom Coughlin's too old for the game, and he probably should never coach again anywhere or be part of any football organization. But, like I said, it goes to Super Bowls, and he won 2 Super Bowls, beating the Bill Belichick dynasty Patriots, and I don't think there's any doubt in my mind he's a Hall of Famer. Maybe not first ballot. Maybe it takes him a few years to get in, but he's 100% a Hall of Famer in my book. Isaac?
So here's the age-old question: what's better, talent or success? A lot of QBs have both. I think. The big thing is rings the definition of greatness, or is it the definition that you are good and had a great team around you? Because I think you can make the arguments for a lot of quarterbacks that won Super Bowls that they were okay, they were good, but they had a great team around them. Joe Flacco, he is elite, but was not a good quarterback compared to the last 30 years of quarterbacks. He had a great defense. He had a good season. But by no means am I looking at Joe Flacco saying he has a ring, Dan Marino doesn't, and therefore I'm moving Flacco up the list. Not necessarily passing Marino, but moving him up the list for that. I don't think anybody on the podcast would disagree with that. I think most of you guys would agree that, using that logic, that being said, the Hall of Fame is very different than what it used to be. It is a lifetime achievement award. He was in the league for 16 years and performed at a very high level for those 16 years. The 117 and 117 record concerns me a little bit. If I'm voting for Eli Manning, he does not get my vote for the Hall of Fame. He gets my Isaac Wright Hall of Fame circle because he beat Tom Brady when Tom Brady looked unbeatable with the helmet catch, and his ability to scramble out of the pocket and get out of the sack and to put a ball and play for the wide receiver to go get it, and then to throw to Mario Manningham 2 plays later for the touchdown. That's going to be immortal stuff in the NFL, and that's going to be some of the greatest plays to ever happen in the league, and it's awesome to watch. But I can't put Eli Manning in the Hall. He'll probably make it because it's just a feel-good story. He's a Manning, but I don't think statistically, I don't think he's better than a lot of QBs just because he got rings. And if that's what we're putting, there's going to be a lot of guys that are going to get in the Hall that don't deserve it just because we put rings on their fingers and they get a Super Bowl MVP. And I think that's kind of foolish in some areas. And I agree with some of your guys' points, but I don't think Eli Manning's a Hall of Famer. I think he's a good QB. I think he should be retired and should be in the Ring of Honor for the Giants. I don't think he deserves to put on a gold jacket.
Now, I think you're slandering Eli Manning just a little bit too much, and don't believe me, I find Eli Manning just as boring of a QB as the next guy. But we're looking at, I'm going to go to this little 3-year period here that I have pulled up. 2008, so from when he won the Super Bowl till 2000, what was it, 11? Was it 2011 he won the second one, or was it 12? Sorry, I have a little brain fart here. But in those 4 years, or in those 4 or 5 years, he put up 3,200 yards the year they won the Super Bowl, 21 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions. And then the following seasons, 4,933, so damn near 5,000. And you look at his touchdown-interception ratios in his prime, you look at his yards, you look at his completion percentage during that time period, upwards 62, 63%. I think those numbers are good, and I don't like how you compare Joe Flacco to him. In my opinion, Joe Flacco had one, maybe 2 good years. He wasn't anywhere close to Eli Manning's level in his prime. I think Joe Flacco had a lot more talent on his team than Eli had. I mean, Eli, let's talk about Hakeem Nicks, Mario Manningham. Those are 2 guys who shined bright a couple years during the Giants. Well, you could say the Giants when they were at their best, going 10-6 and 9-7 and such. After they left New York, did we see much from them? I mean, I know they were injury prone, but I don't like the Eli slander. I don't like Eli as a quarterback, or as a media personality would be how I would put it. But I think he has enough stats. He has just enough stats, excuse me. But he also has the rings. I think he has just enough stats, but he has the rings. And I think at the end of the day, that's what puts him through for me. So, do you have a grudge against Eli, Isaac?
No, I mean I love Eli. I think again what he was able to do against the Patriots when nobody else was able to, David and Goliath. I love him for that. That's gonna be Eli in my memory until the day I die, is what he was able to do against Tom Brady and slaying the Giants. But I mean, there's a lot of QBs that I think are just on the fence. I think it's stupid to even consider him as a first ballot Hall of Famer. His numbers just don't line up with, like I said, I think he will eventually get in. If he's first ballot, then, I guess I'm wrong. You guys can bring up this podcast and throw it in my face whenever you want. But, what is it, 5 or 6 years from now, when his name first arrives on that thing, I really don't think it's going to be. I think he may get in second, third try, but there are other QBs that deserve to be in over him that aren't. Phil Simms, I think they're pretty similar quarterbacks. They would have a great season, lead him to a Super Bowl. They get the Super Bowl MVP. Unlike Manning, Phil Simms has an MVP of the league under his belt. I think the Hall of Fame has really changed over the years, and I think that's why he will get in. I just don't think that he deserves to get in. Just based off the fact that I think he was a good but not great quarterback, and I think that great quarterbacks belong in the Hall of Fame. And there's a fine line between a great quarterback and a good quarterback surrounded by good playmakers and a good defense. And I think that's what every Super Bowl run he had an excellent running game. He had good wide receivers surrounding him, and he had a great defensive backfield and defensive line that got the job done for them, that were, created pressure, got the quarterback out of the pocket. They wrecked Brady that game. And I think that, we're going to talk about, Super Bowl rings. We have to look at a lot of people besides Eli Manning in those 2 victories.
See, I like the points you made. I think some of them are valid, but so that's going to wrap it up for part 1 of our our 2-part week segment we'll be releasing. Part 2 will be released on Wednesday, and of course we'll be talking about Zion's comeback and how he's doing since coming back from the injury. We'll be taking a look at the cheating Astros and what should be done with them, and we'll also be talking about Antonio Brown, etc. And plus, we'll always not forget to throw Hayden's hot take in there at the part 2 episode, and Isaac's right or wrongs. And for the very few of you that want to listen to my soccer roundup, I'll have that as well on Wednesday. So we're going to have to say goodbye. I hope everyone has a great Monday, and hold over Tuesday because we got another episode coming Wednesday. You guys like to say goodbye?
Yes, I would. I would like to dedicate this podcast to my fish that passed away a couple days ago, Bobby Schmurda. He was a great fish for the 4 days that I had him, full of life and energy, and I'm sorry that I failed him as a fish dad, but I'm glad that he gets to live on in paradise.
Hayden?
Yeah, no offense, Isaac. I'm disappointed that you dedicated our podcast here to your 4-day-old fish that was full of life for 4 days. I think there's some, yeah, exactly. Pete, I think there's a bigger thing we could have, maybe looked at dedicating this one toward Isaac. But maybe we do that the second part of this week, and we go ahead and let the fish take the glory here for the Monday episode.
So we will let the fish take the glory on episode 3 of Here We Go Again. Shout out to Bobby Schmurder, the fish who only lived 4 days that we know of, to Isaac Wright's fish dad skills. Anyways, I hope everyone has a great Monday and enjoy your Tuesday off. We'll be with you guys on Wednesday for part 2. Here we go again.